Barry Windham was the wrestler every promoter wanted. Tall, athletic, blonde, smooth as Tennessee whiskey, and just as likely to knock you out. He moved like a cruiserweight in a cowboy's body. But under the clean boots and horseman polish, Barry was a walking cold front. If he hated you, you didn't get a shouting match. You got stiffed in the ring, iced out backstage, and then quietly erased from his radar. This ain't about booking decisions or fantasy feuds. This is the real list. 4 men Barry Windham legit hated shoot style. Not kayfabe, not podcast fluff. Just 4 names that made Barry's jaw tighten, his hands curl, and his exit strategy activate. He didn't cut promos about them. He didn't ask for a meeting. He just stopped showing up like, if that guy's in the angle, I'm out. And sometimes he wasn't wrong. Let's dig into the dusty roadkill Barry left behind. Barry Windham didn't just hate lazy workers, he hated liars with pecs. And to him, Nikita Koloff was both. While the fans saw the snarling Soviet with a neck like a tree stump, Barry saw a guy who wrestled like a broken chainsaw, loud, awkward, and dangerous if you got too close. Windham grew up under Blackjack Mulligan. He learned timing, pacing, ring IQ. Nikita learned bench press. Barry once told a ref, "This guy's so stiff I thought I was wrestling a vending machine." You weren't calling spots with Nikita. You were guessing which direction he was going to fall. Their matches were pure pain. Koloff worked so heavy that Barry came backstage one night and said, "If I wanted to get clubbed in the back like that, I'd go to jail and mouth off to a guard." To make it worse, Barry didn't believe a damn word of Nikita's injury routine. When Koloff claimed a neck issue in '87 and skipped out on a run, Windham shook his head and said, "Neck injury? Yeah, probably pulled it trying to duck a headlock." Working with Koloff felt like doing the waltz with a refrigerator. "He's got one gear," Barry said, "and it's whatever direction I'm not going." There was no yelling, no confrontation. Windham just started no-selling the whole idea of teaming or feuding with him. He'd see the booking sheet and mutter, "Hope there's an ambulance parked ringside. He ain't hurting me, but I might have to drag him around the ring for 15. By the late 80s, Barry had mentally cut Koloff out of his world. "He's not a heel, he's not a face, he's a hazard," he once joked to Dusty Rhodes. No punches thrown, no promos cut, just pure contempt, and a quiet prayer that the next opponent had knees that bent. Barry Windham and Arn Anderson were horsemen by blood, but only one of them ever got tired of bleeding for it. Their heat wasn't about egos, it was physical, raw, and way too real to be just business. If Ric Flair was the wine, Barry was the whiskey, and Arn was the broken bar stool nobody wanted to sit on anymore. It started with stiff matches. Arn worked tight, which Barry respected, until it turned into bruises that didn't belong. Windham told one locker room, "If I wanted to be slapped in the mouth that hard, I'd go home and forget my anniversary." The respect between them cracked like a bad knee during a suplex. Then came Halloween Havoc, '91. Barry's hand got slammed in a car door during an angle, and insiders whispered it wasn't exactly an accident. Windham showed up the next week and said, "That door had more psychology than half the guys in the ring, including Arn." It wasn't just the ring work. Arn was a horseman lifer. Barry, he was a horseman when it fit, and a ghost when it didn't. They clashed over booking, over finishes, and over that unspoken code of loyalty that Barry never bought into. "Horseman loyalty?" Barry once scoffed. "You mean riding second class behind Flair while Arn plays hall monitor?" Backstage, they kept it pro, most of the time. But when you watched Barry bump just a little harder than needed on an Arn spinebuster, you knew something was bubbling. He didn't have to say it. The receipts were folded up in his boots. "Arn throws a punch like he's mad at his wife," Barry once joked, "and sells like he just heard her lawyer on the phone." By the time Barry bailed on WCW, he didn't give Arn a heads up, a handshake, or a warning. Just poof, gone. Loyalty cuts both ways. If you want to know why Barry Windham eventually walked out of wrestling, start with Jim Herd. The man wasn't just a bad executive. He was the kind of boss that made cowboy blood curdle faster than a spilled beer in a Texas saloon. Herd ran WCW in the late 80s and early 90s like he was managing a chain of dry cleaners, not a wrestling company filled with dudes ready to punch each other in the face for a living. Barry never minced words about Herd. In a shoot interview, he called him the worst booker and executive I ever worked for. And that's coming from a guy who worked under Bill Watts, Dusty Rhodes, and a dozen others who could make you want to quit wrestling before your first paycheck cleared. Herd wasn't just bad at the creative side. He didn't understand wrestling culture at all. Barry once said, "The guy thought you could fix wrestling like a washing machine, like, oh, just spin it and it'll work better." The tension wasn't just backstage awkwardness. Herd made decisions that actively killed careers and Barry's patience. And it wasn't just creative. Herd's ego was massive, like a wrestler trying to sell a title shot while wearing a novelty belt from Spencer's Gifts. Barry once quipped, he treated wrestlers like office drones, like, here's your script, now get back to stapling. The man didn't get wrestling was built on trust, respect, and pain. Herd brought none of those. Eventually the heat got so thick Barry wasn't just mad, he was done. His exit wasn't subtle. According to insiders, Barry gave Herd an ultimatum, change your ways or I'm gone. Herd didn't change. Barry did. He left WCW in a way that was loud but silent. No farewell promos, no press conferences, just vanished. Jim Herd didn't just make me hate wrestling, Barry said once. He made me hate the whole business. If Barry Windham had a shoot list titled People Who Turned My Stomach, Ric Flair's name would be engraved at the top in gold, sequins, and pure betrayal. Forget the horseman nostalgia, forget the robes, the limos, the stylin' and profilin'. Barry didn't care about any of that when he looked at Flair and saw a man who used the horseman brand like a personal pyramid scheme, with everyone else playing second fiddle to a fiddle with a drinking problem. Barry hated how Flair politicked backstage. Rick kissed babies and kissed bookers harder. Barry didn't play that game. He wanted to work, not campaign. Flair? Flair was shaking hands with the office, whispering names, making sure his spot stayed locked. If Rick's mouth is moving, Barry once said, someone's job is probably ending. And then there was the betrayal in 1988, when Barry turned on Lex Luger and joined the Horsemen. It looked like a push. It felt like a moment. But Barry quickly realized it was just another orbit around Planet Flair. He wasn't booked to rise. He was booked to orbit Rick's ego. He once said, being in the Horsemen with Rick is like being in a band where the lead singer turns off your mic. Flair's constant spotlight hogging, the lies about equal billing, and the fact that Barry busted his ass in matches while Rick sipped cocktails after 10-minute promos, it all added up. By the time WCW was falling apart, Barry didn't just walk away from Rick. He practically spit in the guy's direction. Flair wrote in his book they drifted apart. Barry never corrected him, because he didn't care enough to respond. And when Windham was asked years later why he stopped speaking to Flair, he didn't yell, he didn't rant, he just said, Rick's great, for Rick. Barry Windham didn't quit wrestling with a retirement tour or a grand Hall of Fame send-off. When he left, there were no promos, no press conferences, no emotional goodbyes, just silence. That's because Barry didn't see wrestling as a career you celebrated. It was a fight, not a performance. He grew up in a generation where if you couldn't handle it, you left, quietly, with your dignity intact. By the time the business became more about brand deals than busted lips, Barry knew he didn't belong. He didn't need closure, and he didn't want applause. He just wanted out. Windham was a throwback to a time when wrestling was still dangerous, when a man's word meant more than his merch sales, and a handshake wasn't a setup for a swerve. But by the mid-90s, Barry looked around the locker room and saw the business getting fake, and not just the matches. The locker rooms turned into green rooms. The boys became brands, and the guys calling the shots didn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch. Barry wasn't disillusioned, he was insulted. He had multiple knee surgeries, a serious back issue, and a heart that had taken more bumps than most cruiserweights. But the body wasn't what gave out. It was the soul. I didn't quit because I couldn't wrestle, he once told a friend. I quit because it wasn't wrestling anymore. There was no press release, no media tour, just a cowboy tossing his gear in a bag, walking out the back door and never calling the arena again. He didn't ask for respect, he just stopped giving it. And in the end, Barry Windham left the business the same way he walked into it. With 0 bulls, 1 boot forward, and absolutely no need to explain himself to people he didn't respect. He did get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame twice, once in 2012 with the 4 Horsemen, and again in 2024 as part of the US Express. But true to form, Barry never turned those moments into long speeches or dramatic farewells. He kept it brief, quietly acknowledging his place without hogging the spotlight. What really pushed Barry away wasn't injuries or age. It was the soul-sucking backstage politics and the phony smiles replacing real respect. They made it about the show, he said. I came here to fight. And when fighting stopped, meaning what it used to, Barry packed up his boots and walked out the back door, leaving the drama and the fake smiles behind. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Because Barry already left and isn't coming back, Follow for more savage shoot-downs, burned bridges, and the legends who actually meant it when they walked away. Click that button. Or Barry finds your ankle and figure fours it into retirement.